Hey everybody, it's Old School Nerd. Welcome in. I have a question for you. Here's the question. What does the Food Network and shark repellent have to do with each other? Actually nothing. But at the end of this video, we may not be able to say that. Come on everybody, you know it, you watch it. Come on. People cooking on television. Been around for a long time. I mean, let's be honest. The Food Network, specials on Netflix, things like that, right? You know, you watch them. Even my most ardent dudes, you know, you be watching it, you know. And let's just be honest, it's kind of dominated by women. And I'm not hating it at all. I mean, take a look. Antonia LaFasa, Mei Lin, Tiffany Derry, Manit Chauhan, Prue Leith, Paul Hollywood, all of these amazing women are culinary masters and household names. You see them all the time on TV. I mean, women lead the way when it comes to cuisine and what we learn via the internet and television these days. Yeah, that joke's funny because if you watch the Great British Baking Show, the joke about Paul being one of the most amazing women chefs in the world, the joke that was not started by me, started by Noel, and he knows that. But anyway, if you're into TV cooking shows, whether it be on the Food Network, and yeah, I know, Bobby Flay, Guy Fieri, and all the big stalwarts on TV, lately women have just been killing it. In fact, women have always been killing it. In fact, to see any of these faces on TV, you had to start with the OG. The OG was Miss Julia Child. And I know the picture's kind of faded and then you know, well, she's an OG. How OG is she? Well, yeah. A lot of people think that Julia Child is a famous British chef that we always saw on public television back in the day. And she was with her unique style of talking. Here's some things you don't know. She's not British. She was born, raised, and she died in California. Yeah, she's a California lady. She's all 6'2". Yes, 6'2". California goddess. Yeah. And she filled our TV screens when I was a kid. Now, don't get me wrong. She wasn't the first one. I mean, there were a few, but I mean, as a kid growing up in the 80s, this was my life. We had 4 channels on the TV, 4 channels, right? ABC, CBS, NBC, and of course, the almighty PBS. Now, on PBS, you, of course, if you were a kid like me, you were there for Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And then after that, you caught some Doctor Who, and yes, the one that's shown, Tom Baker, is for me, Doctor Who. I know there's like 47 of them, but for me, it was that guy with the scarf and the little dog robot and the hat, yeah, and the curly hair, yeah, and the bad British teeth, yeah, that guy. Tom Baker was Doctor Who for me. And also, the living legend Bob Ross, and I'm not going to say anything about Bob Ross right now, because I want everyone to go and watch the documentary and realize that every time I say Bob Ross, somebody other than Bob Ross's family is making money every time I say Bob Ross. Go watch that documentary. It will break your heart. But if you weren't watching one of those shows, somewhere in the middle, there were cooking shows on PBS. And they were pretty transformative for me. In fact, if we think about it, there were shows like Yan Can Cook, where it was my first introduction to Asian cuisine that wasn't in an Asian restaurant. And I realized that I could do that at home. And then I tried, and I can't, because apparently Yang can cook, and so can you, but not can Old School Nerd. I couldn't do it. Then, of course, there was Justin Wilson, and I could have a whole video about Justin Wilson because he was a Cajun chef who was not Cajun at all. He was from eastern Louisiana, just south of Mississippi. He has no Cajun roots whatsoever. His mother, who was not Cajun, and she had Cajun friends who told her about Cajun food, and I guarantee he cooked Louisiana Southern cuisine, not Cajun at all. But unfortunately for a lot of you, between him, Bobby Boucher, the water boy, and the lightning bug from the Frog, Princess and the Frog, yeah, from Disney. Those are the three representations of Cajun culture that most of y'all have. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, Disney's lightning bug was actually the closest. That's saying something. Disney messes up a lot of Cajun stuff. Anyway, that's not the point. The one in the middle is the one we're talking about today, Miss Julia Child. Yeah, so if you were watching PBS with that unique voice and her 6'2" frame, she was towering over. And she has a very, very amazing life. And I want to talk to you about that life real quick. And one of the most important things some of you may not know, she was part of an effort that saved hundreds of lives during World War II. And since then, probably resulted in the saving of thousands of lives. I think she gets her due today because I'm going to give it a try. All right, let's talk about it. Julia Childs was born in California. And during that time, she did a lot of work in publishing. And she was a very unique lady. Not only because of her cooking prowess, which wasn't even evident at this time, but the fact if you're a 6'2" woman back in the 20s and 30s, you were a unique character. Plus, she had a very unique speaking style, which I challenge you to go watch YouTube videos of how she spoke. Now, I would play those videos, but they are copyrighted so damn hard. We're not even going to try that. But trust me, unique style of her voice, her style of speaking is what a lot of people confuse her thinking she was a British chef, and she wasn't. Now, Miss Julia did a lot of amazing things, but during World War II, she joined the OSS. Now, the OSS is the Office of Strategic Services, and it was charged by a colonel by the name of Wild Bill Donovan, who was a World War I Medal of Honor recipient, and he was challenged to be the Office of Combined Information. It's a precursor to the CIA, and FDR challenged Wild Bill Donovan to create the OSS, which basically is the Office of Strategic Services, did all the off-the-book stuff. Now, during World War II, there was a power struggle. You had FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as the president, and you had the United States military. But then J. Edgar Hoover, and that's a whole nother video, was the head of the FBI. And J. Edgar Hoover knew about everybody's skeletons in everyone's closets. And for some reason that still exists today. But back then, when it came to surveillance and counterintelligence and intelligence services, the FBI ran everything in the continental United States and all of the Americas. But we didn't have an intelligence service that operated overseas, past the oceans. In Asia, Africa, Europe, we needed someone. And so they charged Wild Bill Donovan to create the Office of Strategic Services. And they handled things like, well, you've heard about the French resistance and all these resistance movements and spy networks. And you've seen all the different movies, right? Well, Inglourious Bastards, yeah, that's a fictional story about some non-fictional people. And those are all part of the Office of Strategic Services. Well, Ms. Julia Child volunteered and joined the Office of Strategic Services. Not as a cook. No, not at all. She wasn't even a chef yet. No, she started off as a clerk, a typist, a file clerk. But one of the projects that she was working on as a clerk was a particular need where we had explosive devices underwater, like underwater mines to sink German U-boats, to protect America's harbors, to protect our allies' harbors. The problem is that sharks are curious. Did you know this? Most of the time when people are bitten by a shark, it's not because the shark is hungry. Sharks are as curious as cats. They also have the same temperament. They'd rather see you dead than alive. And that's just the way sharks are. But sharks rarely bite humans to feed. They bite humans because they're curious and they don't have hands. So they nibble. The problem is when a shark nibbles you, you bleed a lot. Once you start bleeding, sharks do smell blood in the water and it causes them to go into feeding frenzy. And that's usually when humans get into trouble. So here's the thing. It also was a problem for underwater mines. Yes, sharks would go up to underwater mines, don't know what they are. And underwater mines were made out of metal, which had a unique electromagnetic signal, which attracted sharks. And the government was confused. So they said, hey, Wild Bill, figure this out. And Wild Bill Donovan and the OSS tried to figure it out. Now, when they realized that sharks are different than most hunting mammals like whales, sharks were very indicative of electromagnetic pulses, also smells in water, especially hammerhead sharks. Hammerhead sharks, that entire bow you see, is an electromagnetic transceiver. It would send out electrical pulses, bioelectrical pulses. They're not electronic, but they would sense things, and because metal objects give off a certain magnetic signature, it attracted sharks. They were trying to figure out a way to get sharks to not do that. So what happened was they got all these scientists in a room, and these scientists were told, hey, you got to figure this out. And the scientists were like, okay, so this is what we could do. We need to figure out what pisses off sharks. So what they found out was basically, they found out that they needed a way to deter sharks from going near their mines. That way they wouldn't accidentally explode the mines under the water, thereby, it was a problem. It's a problem between sharks being curious, touching the mines, setting them off, instead of German U-boats setting them off. It's a problem. So Julia was a clerk, research typist, and file clerk in the office that was doing it. And the different researchers and scientists that were doing the work realized that Julia was really good at analytics. She was really good at research, and she was really good at comparing specific facts down to a chemistry level. She's really good at balancing, which what you need to do if you're going to be a chef, or especially a pastry chef, a baker. It's all about the intricate details. And what they found out is that to make these different shark repellents, there's a compound. It's a copper acetate. Yeah, copper acetate. It's a chemical that when you put it in water, it gives off an odor, but not to us. It's not something that we smell. But apparently, if you take this compound and you dissolve it in water, to a shark, it smells like dead, rotted sharks. Specifically sharks. Sharks have a unique chemical compound in their body. They're unique in the fish world. And one of the things that occurs is when a shark's liver starts to decompose, it releases this compound. And this copper acetate, when dissolved in salt water, smells like the rotting liver of a shark. And sharks hate that. So if blood in the water will gather sharks from miles around, this particular smell will deter them a lot. Like 60% of the time, which is better than zero. So they were trying to figure out a way to make this work, and Julia came up with the idea. She was one of the people that came up with an idea that said, you guys are trying to take this chemical and you're trying to put it in a bag and slowly let the bag leak, and it's going out too fast. We need something that we can attach to the chain or the anchor point of one of these mines, and it stay there for weeks, months at a time, and not just dissipate. We need something to go off. And she realized that in California, there were construction crews that were realizing that rainwater and irrigation was causing the erosion of bricks that were being built by houses. And they found out that a certain compound of different minerals could solidify this. And one of her things that she did this is a woman who loved tea. She hated coffee. I didn't know that until I did the research. But apparently Julia hated coffee, but she loved tea. And back in the day, you didn't have tea bags like we do now. In fact, the tea bag actually came from this research, okay? You took a metal container, a metal round container with holes drilled in it. You put your tea leaves in there, and then you dipped it in the water. The water would go in the holes, out the holes, and the tea would get brewed. And she said, why don't we do that? Why don't we take the copper acetate and we combine it into like a hard loaf, like a brick. Okay. And they were like, and we could put it in a container with holes in it. So as the water goes in, it dissolves the brick slowly. And as the water comes out through motion, it'll slowly add the chemical compound that we're trying to release. And it will take months for it to go away, or depending upon the size. They were like, Julia is no longer a file clerk. Julia is one of the key members of this project. And that's one of the greatest things she did. And she won the Meritorious Civilian Service Award for this. Now, that was all the way back in World War II. Now, here's the really interesting thing. So Julia's still not a chef. She's still not a cook. She's still not on TV. She's still not doing all the things that we think about. But what happened was she did get married. So while she was in the OSS, she marries her husband. And they meet, they get married in 1946. She's still doing research. She's still doing work for the U.S. government. But he is in the U.S. Foreign Services. Now, and after World War II, we inundated Europe and Asia with agents. Why? Because Soviet communism was on the march, reconstruction of Europe and Asia, and we were into everything, even more than we are now. The CIA comes online, the OSS goes away, and her husband was in the U.S. Foreign Service, and he just happened to be stationed in Paris, France, where she goes to live with him. While in Paris, they go to a restaurant in Paris, France. She falls in love with French cooking, so much so she looks over her husband and she goes, you know what? I think I want to do this. So she goes to culinary school in Paris, France. So now you have someone who is amazingly intricate in details, a unique speaking voice, apparently, according to everyone who has ever met her, both professionally and personally, one of the nicest, sweetest, most wonderful people. Not to mention she's 6'2", and that's just amazing. All of it. She's like literally a culinary superhero, and she's got, hey, I'm an unsung hero of World War II. Why? Because the idea of putting the shark repellent on mines was cool. Julia was one of the people that said, you know what we could do? We could make it small, like a little cake. And we could put that in a little, like a new thing called a plastic bag, which, by the way, was invented during World War II, taking petroleum and turning it into plastic. We could put it in a plastic bag. And then Julia's like, what we could do is put it in the little plastic bag, and it could be strapped to a sailor or a pilot who's downed in temperate waters. Because back in those days, pilots would be stuck out at sea for days. And sailors in wartime, when your ship gets sunk and you're all together, it can, a lot of times this was happening in the South Pacific, South America, around the equator, where shark species are, you ever heard the word shark infested waters? It's not shark adjacent or there's a couple sharks in the water. It's shark infested waters. And a lot of times in wartime, pilots and sailors, when they were downed or went overboard, might scratch themselves or be injured, and they may be bleeding. So how do you counteract that? Yeah, you take a repellent compound packet and it dissolves in 3.5 hours, according to this. And you replace it in the vest every so many hours. Now, to release the chemical, you just pull the tab on the top. It allows water in and out, and this block in here dissolves. It's a unique idea, and it saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives, not only during World War II, but even all the way to now. Now, modern shark repellent is a little bit different. Now in modern shark repellent, not only do we use chemicals like this that deter sharks, well, because we now know that sharks are very electromagnetically sensitive, the same thing that caused the sharks to be attracted to the underwater mines, if we reverse the polarity, you can repel sharks using electromagnetics. So now pilots wear a bracelet. Not like these. These are Buddhist prayer beads. The ones that the pilots wore were metal, and not the copper ones you see on the infomercials at night. No, these actually gave off an electromagnetic field that was small but effective in repelling sharks, because sharks don't like that stuff. Granted, if you can find out how sharks are attracted to metal, you can certainly figure out a way to make them unattracted to metal. That's how all that works. So Julia did all that amazing work, and so many service people owe her their lives during World War II, and that's awesome. Her story doesn't end there. Remember, how did she get on TV to be a cook? Well, she wasn't a cook. Again, she moves to France because her husband is transferred there for the United States Intelligence Services, Foreign Services, and she goes to French culinary school, falls in love. They move back to California, and over time, she's a remarkable woman where you have amazing positivity, you have expert knowledge, an attention to detail, and honestly, if you think about it, she looks like everybody's mom. I want to hug her. I mean, I want the cake, but you know, I'm not saying I want Julia Child's cake. Nowadays, when I say that, it sounds ridiculous. Not true at all. So there you go. Unsung hero is Julia Child. Could you imagine if Julia Child had not taken a risk, spoken up? How many lives would we have lost? I don't know. I don't even know how many lives she saved. I'm still trying to figure out the fact that she's not British. That blew me away. So there you go. It's Julia Child, unsung woman of history. And a lot of the stuff about her didn't really come out until last year. Yeah, I know. Those are the secrets that we're releasing. We still don't know what happened with JFK or Martin Luther King, but yeah, maybe one day. Probably not. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you enjoyed this video, give us a like. It really helps the channel grow. Also, if you want to subscribe, right over there. A big thank you to all my Patreons out there for everything you do. And if you want more content like this, check them out above. Remember, love one another, take care of each other. We're all stuck on this mud ball together. We'll see you later.